We have a really interesting solar eclipse coming up on April 8th. It's called, this is specific to the United States, but we have what's called the next great American eclipse. And the first one was in August of 2017. And it cut like a line across the country going this way, the path of totality for the eclipse. And now we have another one that's going to cut a line going this way. So it makes like an X, the path of totality from the eclipse. Hi, my name is Daniel Berdichevsky. I live in San Diego, California, in the United States. I was having heart problems. I was having arrhythmia. We wanted to rest or take like a rest during the day, a day nap after one of the church services. And so I go back into my little room. We had these tiny little rooms, and I laid down on the bed, and it was probably sometime in the afternoon. And not even 5 minutes in, I am not sleeping at all. I'm still wide awake, but I actually feel the sensation of my heart stopping. And I felt my last beat. And when I felt my last beat is when I felt my last breath. And it was very distinct, a very distinct feeling to know that that was your last. And I knew it was. And at that point, I started feeling the sensation of crawling out of my chest. It is the only way I can describe it. Like I was pulling myself, like imagine a rope, and I'm just trying to pull myself out of my chest. And I did. And immediately I just end up in the ceiling and I'm staring down at myself. And I did not know that that body was me. I couldn't figure out what I was looking at because I have never seen myself from that perspective. So I stared at it for a very, very long time. And I finally came to the realization that that thing laying there was me. And when that moment came, as soon as that realization came, I shot up through the ceiling. But before that, I noticed um, I noticed a lot of things that I could do and perceive. So, for example, I was able to see 360 degrees all around me. I was able to see through the walls, and I was focusing on a liturgy or a prayer taking place in the room next to me. And I focused on the monks in that church, and they were praying, but I didn't just see them pray. I felt everything that they were feeling. I almost like went inside their consciousness and was able to experience what they were experiencing. And so it was kind of like I could almost describe it as like tentacles, like kind of like tentacles of consciousness that went into these people as they were praying. And I remember admiring their sincerity and their devotion to prayer and how they were very serious and they were real. Like this wasn't, they weren't putting on a show. It wasn't like some religious dogma. These people were really genuine with their faith. And so as I stopped focusing on them, I realized that's my body below. I shoot up through the ceiling and I end up in space, basically, or high above the atmosphere. And I look down on the western coast of the US and I see fires everywhere. We were in Northern California, and at that time there was wildfire. There was something like 700 wildfires uh, up north because of lightning strikes. So I noticed all these little fires everywhere, and they looked so strange and surreal to me. And I can't explain exactly how I felt about it, but it just almost looked like unreal, like it wasn't like it was a game almost. But I saw the west coast of the US and I focused in that sort of tentacle effect went in again and I sort of focused my consciousness into a city, which I believe was San Francisco. And it was the same sort of process with the monks. I kind of started branching out and kind of connecting with the minds and the bodies and everything of just strangers in that city. And what was interesting was that they didn't feel like strangers at all. I felt like I knew them all deeply and profoundly, and I was able to sense their pain and their grief and their sorrow and their joy and everything. I sensed everything that they were feeling while like basically connecting my consciousness with theirs. And my focus went away from the city and got higher into into the atmosphere and I'm able to see the entire world now. And the world um, looked very crystalline, like it was sparkling like diamonds. It had this luminosity to it, and it had an aspect to it that felt kind of unnatural too, and another one that felt very natural and very ancient, like very, very ancient, like beyond time. And also, I got this impression that it was breathing, like the world was breathing and it was alive, and I could feel the life that was coming from the planet. And this sort of shimmering energy that surrounded the planet, it almost felt like a technology to me, or like something that doesn't necessarily belong there, but it is there. And it was kind of fused with this ancient deity, this ancient world that we call Earth. But regardless, it was very much alive and very much living, and I could sense that very deeply. And so I go up again, and I see the galaxy. The galaxy looked very much like a spiral Milky Way that you see in telescopes. And I go higher, and I see the universe, and the universe is then enveloped in this white void. So it just kind of closes in. It was kind of like this kind of an effect. I'm going up and it just closes, and I'm just surrounded by white mist with golden sparkles. So there's a white mist, and I see golden sparkles flying all around me. And I still feel like I have a body this entire time. I forgot to mention that. I really very much felt like I was very much just a person in a body, not too different to right now. It was just a lot more clarity and a lot lighter. But as I go into this void and surrounded by this white mist, I see this golden light. And when I observe the golden light, my any sensation of having a body disappears completely, and I become this form or a globe of consciousness. Like I just become this sphere of awareness, and this sphere of awareness um, was a really liberating feeling. I knew immediately when I was there that that was my natural state, that that was how we actually are, and that was like our eternal selves. And so I'm in this, and I had a color too. I was dark blue. my sphere was dark blue, and I'm looking at the light, and the light is pouring down to me uh, an amount of love that transcends all space and all time. So what that means is that it showed me all the love now and forever. So if I have a billion future lives from now, that love will never change. And that's what I knew at that moment, was that from that light, no matter what happens in eternity, that love is never going to change. Whether it was something in the past, whether it was present, future, it will always be the same forever. And I knew that. And I also felt this sensation like being on Earth was like a distant memory now. So it felt like just this very minuscule experience that didn't matter. Like it was just this tiny little dream compared to where I am now. And I forgot that I was even there while I was in this, I call it a timeless space. There was no perception of depth or width or time or space. You didn't know it was as infinitely large as it is infinitely small. There was no context to anything. Like I like to call it the absolute 0 point because I feel like everything in this space collapses into zero, and it contains everything that always was and always will be. And that's what I felt. I actually kind of knew that. I knew that the space contained all that is. And so I'm in this space and I see another blue sphere of consciousness who approaches me, and I know who they are immediately. And it's not that I necessarily know them from this planet, but I've known this soul forever. It was some kind of a soulmate. I don't know how or what that necessarily means, but what I did know was that I knew this soul forever. And it was a very deep bond. Nothing compares. A mother with a newborn child does not even come close to the bond I felt with this being, or the bond we all felt there, actually, because I saw many spheres of light moving around in this space in many different colors, from yellow to red to blue, purple, and all kinds of different colors. And they're all different forms of consciousness that were kind of interacting with this space and with this light. And it was all kind of harmonious and almost musical in a way. It kind of felt like I was inside of a musical symphony, basically. And so this sphere approached me and it showed me this wheel. I can only describe it as a wheel. It looked like this circular pattern. And inside the circular pattern, I see the earth. And I don't see it as like the planet. I see it as like everything, meaning all the events that took place on it, past, present, and future. And they're all kind of intersecting with each other. So it's really hard to explain. But I was observing the past, present, and future, and they were interacting with each other, and they were completely connected with no separation in between any of it. There was no distinction between them, like it was one continuous loop. And I saw all the events taking place, and I remember focusing in. So if you focus in on this wheel, you notice certain things. And I started looking at different empires. I actually really especially remember seeing the Roman Empire and Colosseums and gladiators and things like that, and all these chariots and games. And I was kind of looking ahead, and I see the Middle Ages, and all these different time periods. And I observed specifically like kings and queens or people in authority who have power. And I remember actually laughing, and it seemed funny to me that these kings thought that they had so much power. Like it seemed really silly to me that they thought they were so important, because from my perspective, this they were just playing this little game on this little planet, and they just looked ridiculous and arrogant to me that they thought of themselves as important. So, um, but yeah, for what purpose I was shown that, I don't know. It wasn't revealed to me, and I do remember future stuff. So I'll go into more details. So, and I see that I'm like a stock market broker, and I see that the stock market has melted down like completely, thousands of points down, and I see a bunch of TVs in front of me, like a wall of televisions. And on the TVs, I see just World War, um, like ships being sunk, fighter jets bombing, fighter jets bombing. Um, and I see just complete and total chaos around the whole world. And from the perspective of the stockbroker, he's like, he's just completely losing his mind. He's just losing his mind. He can't handle what he's seeing. And so after watching all the fighter jets and the bomber planes, the bombing cities, and I'm in space, and I see the northeast of the US, and I see just a wall of water completely destroy the entire East Coast. And when I mean completely, I mean like it went 100 miles. The water went really deep into the land. Like people who are familiar with America will know what I'm talking about. But I saw the water go past New Jersey, the entire state, and like end up in Pennsylvania. So very, very deep into America. And I'm not entirely sure what caused this wave, but I just saw it happening from space. And that was the most profound one I've seen of what I perceive to be a future vision. And for the distant future, I saw really interesting like things with people working with energy to heal, and they're like working with sound and vibrations to create art and to create things, and they would like switch bodies, or like the consciousness would like go from one body to another, and it was really strange. And they would be like put in suspended animation, and like I actually saw people like being put in a deep sleep, and their consciousness would leave their body, and they would go back into the past. So like they would be reborn into the past. So like this in the distant future. We have a really interesting solar eclipse coming up on April 8th. It's called, this is specific to the United States, but we have a what's called the next great American eclipse. And it's the first one was in August of 2017. And it cut like a line across the country going this way, the path of totality for the eclipse. And now we have another one that's going to cut a line going this way. So it makes like an X, the path of totality from the eclipse. All I can say is like be ready for anything. Uh, just be ready for nothing or everything. That's the only way I could put it. Like just be prepared for anything that comes our way, because it might, and it might be hard, and it already is. So, but don't be like I'm not saying like give in to fear or be scared or nothing like that. I just mean like be in the state of awareness that anything can come. And that blue consciousness left, and I turn my attention back to the light itself, and I plead with it to stay and beg it to stay. Um, it responds emotionally, not with language. It responds in like a heart energy, I guess you could call it. And it rejected me, and I was really hurt. I was really hurt. I didn't want to go at all, and it was a really sad moment. And it pushed me out of that sphere and back into everything was in reverse again. I saw the galaxy. I saw everything again in reverse, and I slammed back into my body. And I remember gasping for breath and being unable to breathe, and was very pale and sweaty and unwell. And the first thing I do is I get up and look at myself in the mirror, and I was as white as a ghost. I had bags under my eyes. I looked really bad. And so that moment, I kind of realized that I actually did die. And from then on, what proceeded later was the heart problem went away completely. There was no issues whatsoever. So I didn't have to. I went back to the doctor one time, and they said there's no issue, and they sent me home. Everything has changed. I mean, I've always been open mind, like I've always been kind of an open-minded person, but at that time I was really unsure about what this was, and I still honestly still kind of am, because to me it's still just as mysterious. That doesn't it doesn't mean like I have all the answers now. Actually, I have more questions than answers. But the mystery is part of what's beautiful about it, though. So, but my perspective has changed in the sense that I know we're eternal. So that's not something I speculate. That's not something, oh, maybe. For me, this is an absolute undeniable fact that we are forever as humans, as beings on this planet. That's the one of the main things that changed. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. It really is fulfilling to me to share my story. And if it has a positive effect on people, that makes me really joyful. And because of people like you who allow me to share my experience, I'm really grateful for you as well. So thank you.